December 1944. Gleize, Belgium. Look closely at this scene. This is no ordinary scrapyard. Before you are the 75-ton king tigers, the invincible monsters of the Third Reich. They sit there, intact, fully loaded, and completely abandoned. On that day, the 1st SS Panzer Division, Adolf Hitler's personal bodyguard unit, did the unthinkable. They cracked open the hatches, climbed out of their invincible machines, and ran. They left behind 135 armored vehicles worth hundreds of millions of dollars in today's currency. 5,000 of Germany's finest soldiers were forced to flee on foot through the freezing forests, leaving their wounded and the pride of the Third Reich sinking in the mud. What defeated this juggernaut? It was not a massive carpet-bombing campaign. It was not a secret division of American super tanks. The collapse of the German war machine began with a 50-cent piece of hemp rope, and a trick so simple, so dangerous, it was not even in the field manual. This is the story of the daisy chain. It is a story about how a group of desperate construction workers outsmarted the most technologically advanced army on Earth and turned the Battle of the Bulge into a traffic jam from hell. To understand the genius of this weapon, you first have to understand the nightmare of the environment. December 1944 in the Ardennes was not just cold. It was lethal. The temperature hovered around 0 degrees Fahrenheit. The ground was not just soil anymore. It was frozen into a substance as hard as granite. And this geological fact is what terrified Lieutenant Colonel David Pergrin and the men of the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion. Pergrin's men were not frontline killers. They were builders. Their war was usually fought with bulldozers and cranes, fixing bridges and filling potholes. But now, intelligence reported that Kampfgruppe Peiper was barreling towards them. Joachim Peiper, the ruthless poster boy of the SS, was leading a column of tanks that stretched for miles. His mission was simple: speed. He had to cross the Meuse River in 24 hours to split the Allied armies. Fuel was his blood. Momentum was his oxygen. If he stopped, Germany died. Pergrin knew the standard military doctrine to stop a tank column. You lay a minefield. You bury M1A1 anti-tank mines in a checkerboard pattern across the road, cover them with dirt, and wait. But when the engineers of the 291st took their entrenching tools out to the roads near Stavelot, they hit a wall of reality. The metal shovels clanged against the earth with the sound of a hammer hitting an anvil. Sparks actually flew from the ground. They tried using pickaxes, but the shock waves just jarred their bones. They could not chip away more than an inch of ice. Imagine the panic setting in. You can hear the distant rumble of Maybach engines getting louder every minute. You know that 70 tons of steel is coming to kill you. You have crates full of high explosives, but you cannot use them because nature has locked the door. You cannot bury the mines. If you leave them on the surface, the German drivers will simply steer around them, or their infantry will kick them aside. The engineers stood there, freezing, exhausted, and effectively disarmed by the weather. The atmosphere was thick with the smell of nervous sweat and wet wool. They were looking at a death sentence. But desperation is the mother of invention. In the command tent, or perhaps in a foxhole while fiddling with a piece of equipment, a question was asked. It was not a question about military tactics. It was a question of mechanics, a problem-solving question. If we cannot hide the mine under the road, why don't we hide it beside the road? It was a ridiculous idea. It sounded like a trap Wile E. Coyote would set for the road runner. But the logic held up. If the mine is on the road, the Germans see it. If the mine is in the ditch, it is useless. But what if the mine could move? The engineers began to experiment. They took the M1A1 mines, heavy steel discs packed with 6 pounds of TNT, and looked for a way to mobilize them. They raided the supply trucks. They found coils of rough hemp rope. They found spools of black field telephone wire. They began tying the mines together. One mine was not enough to guarantee a hit, so they strung 4 or 5 of them in a row, spaced about 5 feet apart. They lashed the rope around the carrying handles, securing them with heavy knots. When they dragged them across the snow, the black mines looked like a dark necklace, a daisy chain. The plan was audacious. They would hide the chain of mines in the snow-covered ditches or behind piles of rubble alongside the narrow roads. A soldier would hide in a foxhole 15 to 20 yards away, holding the end of the rope. He would wait for the tank to be right in front of him, and then yank the mines directly under the tracks. But as the men practiced this motion, the reality of what they were proposing began to sink in. This was not just laying a trap and walking away. This was a duel. To make this work, an American soldier would have to let a Panzer tank, a machine designed to kill everything in its path, drive within spitting distance of his face. He would have to stay perfectly still while the ground shook and the air filled with the exhaust fumes of the enemy. He would have to win a game of chicken against a 45-ton steel monster. Across the lines, Joachim Peiper had no idea this kind of improvisation was happening. To the German high command, the Americans were soft. They were undisciplined. They relied too much on air support and artillery. The Germans were the masters of armored warfare. They had the best tanks, the best optics, and the most disciplined crews. Peiper's column moved with a sense of arrogance. They had a standard procedure for mines. The Panzer pioneers, German combat engineers, walked ahead of the lead tanks with mine detectors. They swept the road methodically. They were looking for the magnetic signature of buried metal. They trusted their technology. They trusted their doctrine. They saw the empty road ahead of them, the white snow unbroken and undisturbed. The needles on their detectors stayed flat. They signaled back to the tank commanders. Road clear, all ahead full. They did not know that the snow-covered ditch to their left was hiding a lethal surprise. They did not know that a freezing American engineer was gripping a piece of rope with white-knuckled hands, waiting for the perfect split second to rewrite the rules of engagement. The stage was set. The technology of the Third Reich was about to collide with the stubborn ingenuity of the American working class. Let us take you to the freezing morning of December 18th, on the approach to the Stavelot Bridge. Visibility is near zero. The fog is thick enough to chew on, but you can hear them coming. The distinctive, high-pitched whine of German Maybach engines and the bone-rattling crunch of steel tracks on frozen asphalt. Hiding behind a ruined stone wall, a sergeant from the 291st grips the end of a frozen hemp rope. His hands are numb, but his adrenaline is pumping so hard he can hear his own heartbeat thudding in his ears. Out of the mist, the shape of a Panzer tank emerges. It is the lead vehicle. 45 tons of sloping armor and a long 75mm gun hunting for targets. Flanking it are infantrymen, eyes scanning the tree line. The German pioneers sweep the road in front of the tank. They walk right past the snow-covered ditch where the mines are hiding. They see nothing. They wave the tank forward. The Panther's driver shifts gears. The engine roars. The tank lurches forward, picking up speed, eager to cross the bridge. The American sergeant waits. The tank is 30 yards away. 20 yards, 10 yards. The ground is shaking violently. He screams, "Now!" He yanks the rope with everything he has. In a split second, a dark line of death slithers out of the ditch and slides across the icy road, directly into the path of the onrushing metal giant. The German driver slams on the brakes, but you cannot stop 45 tons of momentum on ice. Boom! The explosion is not just loud, it is a physical punch to the chest. The blast does not need to blow the turret off, it just needs to do one thing. The explosion shreds the steel track links. It shatters the drive sprocket. The massive Panther lurches violently to the right, skidding out of control before grinding to a halt, sitting sideways across the narrow road. Inside the tank, the crew is dazed, their ears ringing. Outside, chaos erupts. But the real damage is already done. That Panther is no longer a predator. It is a 45-ton doorstop. Because of the steep terrain in the Ardennes, the roads are narrow, corridors with steep banks on either side. The tanks behind the Panther cannot go around. They cannot turn back. The entire column, miles of armor, fuel trucks, and ammunition carriers, slams into a sudden, grinding halt. This is where the daisy chain evolved from a physical weapon into a psychological one. Although Piper would eventually force his way past obstacles like this, the damage to his schedule was catastrophic. The German commanders were baffled. Their mine detectors had shown the road was clear. How could they be hitting mines? Paranoia began to spread through the ranks of the SS like a virus. Every pile of snow, every piece of trash, every shadow on the side of the road now looked like a trap. The American engineers realized they were inside the enemy's head, and they doubled down. They started using phantom mines. They would sometimes throw a rope across the road with nothing attached to it, or tie a few dinner plates to a wire and drag them out. It worked. The Germans were so terrified of the daisy chains that they would screech their convoys to a halt just for a piece of rope. Entire Panzer columns sat idling for hours while engineers inspected a harmless piece of string. The Americans were buying time with garbage, and time was the one thing Joachim Piper could not afford to lose. While the Germans were playing this deadly guessing game, their engines were running. A King Tiger tank consumes hundreds of gallons of gasoline just to travel 100 miles. But even when stopped, they were hemorrhaging fuel. Commanders kept engines idling to keep the heavy batteries charged and the crews from freezing to death. Every hour they sat there, paralyzed by the fear of a rope. They were burning the precious fuel they needed to reach the sea. Piper lost 18 critical hours fighting these delays. 18 hours where his blitzkrieg ground to a halt. And then, the weather broke. The winter fog lifted, and the sky turned blue. Allied fighter bombers, the P-47 Thunderbolts, descended on the stationary column like vultures. They did not have to hunt for targets. The Germans were sitting ducks, lined up bumper to bumper, unable to move forward, unable to retreat. Joachim Piper, the arrogant commander who thought he could smash through the American lines by brute force, realized the game was over. He had not been defeated by superior armor. He had been defeated because he ran out of gas and ran out of road. On Christmas Eve, at the village of Gleize, the end finally came. Surrounded, out of fuel and out of time, Piper gave the order that every tank commander dreads. He ordered his men to destroy their radios, sabotage their guns, and abandon ship. In the dead of night, 800 surviving German soldiers wrapped their boots in rags to silence their footsteps on the snow and slipped away into the forest, trekking on foot back to Germany. Behind them, they left the spoils of war, 135 armored vehicles, the most technologically advanced weaponry on the face of the earth. Reduced to nothing more than cold, heavy scrap metal. That equipment alone could have outfitted 2 full armored divisions. Instead, it became a monument to a failed gamble. History often remembers the generals and the superweapons, the atomic bombs, the jet fighters. But in the frozen forests of 1944, The tide was turned by the 291st Engineer Combat Battalion. These men proved that in war, the most dangerous weapon is not always the biggest gun on the battlefield. Sometimes, it is a 50-cent piece of rope, a few pounds of explosives, and the courage of a soldier willing to wait until the whites of the enemy's eyes are visible before pulling the trigger. The daisy chain was the grandfather of modern asymmetric warfare. It was the predecessor to the IEDs that challenge modern armies today. It taught a lesson that remains true. Technology can be beaten by ingenuity. David had beaten Goliath once again. Not with a stone, but with a rope. What about you? If you were holding that rope, freezing in a ditch with a 45-ton tank bearing down on you, would you have the nerve to wait for the perfect moment? If you enjoyed this story of American ingenuity and grit, please hit that like button. It helps these stories reach more people. Subscribe to Fireline and ring the bell so you never miss a briefing on the untold history of warfare. Leave a comment below telling us what other improvised weapons from World War II you want us to cover next. I am your host for Fireline, and I will see you on the next front line.